Well, that was a very brutal transition. Hello, everyone. We're live. I misclicked on my OBS and we just flipped over. So, hello. Hi, how's everyone? This is us talking about One Frightful Night. So it's kind of our post-mortem for the game that we played. Um, just noticing now that there's like squiggly lines over my face on the overlay. I'll try to fix that. That's my bad. But yeah, we're going to talk about the game that we playtested in November. I'm Simon at Wandering DM. This is a game, a horror game that I had started working on in, I think, summer of 2022. And the playtest we did was the second one we did ever. I think, were you guys at the very first one, the offline one?
I was there for one of them.
I don't think I was at the one that I was at, but I do remember doing like a one shot playtest before we did the streamed one. So
Yeah, because we had like one for the playtest, one for character creation, and then the one we played together with everyone.
Mhm.
But before we go into all that, I'll give the mic up to you guys, and if you want to just tell us who you are and remind everyone who you were playing during that game.
Oh God, who was I playing during that game? An exercise in memory.
Oh, I don't remember the name. I remember the type of characters you played, but not the names.
Yeah, just gonna discreetly launch the roll 20 to
Yeah,
pull
yeah,
up
yeah.
the name I made up.
That
Robert. Oh
works.
wait, that was my character.
Yes. Hi. I'm Yitzai. I play games on the internet with cool people. Case in point, cool people. Uh, I played Chad Lee, a level 2 middle manager who was kind of my experiment on playing more assholey type characters on the internet and in games in general for a more fun thing and not hampering down on other people's fun. A guy you love to hate and who might get redeemed in the end. But yeah, that's who I am, who I played.
And I am Tyler at Boyce Games on Twitter or just at Tyler Boyce on Blue Sky. And I played former detective constable and then just detective Robert Harker of the St. Passery Police Department. And yeah, looking forward to just kind of as a fellow game master slash dungeon master, very excited to talk about rules and mechanics.
Uh, yeah, we so long story short, because this was our very first public playtest, so an actual full game, the first time that we played a one shot. OFN is not quite made for one shots, and so this was like the first trial by fire of the rule set. And following many of your comments that we're going to go into as this session moves along, about 75% of it is going to change, like for the better. But it was very interesting to note that some of the incentives to play with certain rules, like the fact that I wanted players to burn through their stats to succeed. So in order to do that, I made the skill checks very hard to succeed. But then we
Uh,
saw that what it came down to was, well, more often than not, you guys hesitated a lot to use anything but spirit. Except for the last session, but that's because everyone knew it was the last session.
Right,
Um,
right. When we're that close to the finish line, just got to get
yeah,
over no matter what.
that's it.
very smoke if you got him attitude. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I heard all of you when you said, the list of skill is like 30 some odd skills, or like 21. I don't remember exactly. And it's like our characters have like 5 or 3, depending on which package you took. And it's like it feels like you're missing out on a lot of things because you'll essentially suck at everything.
There were a few times we could shine and we were like within our skill set, but yeah, like 60, 70% of the time we were just trying to roll against 18, 15 maybe, if we
Yeah,
were lucky.
and that's just way too much. That's way too high of a difficulty. So big news. I might have like told some of you on like Discord or in random chats or whatnot, but skills are gonna go bye-bye.
Oh, all right.
So it's going to be different. Like the skills themselves, the list that you have on your character sheet, that is going to remain as sort of like inspiration and examples. But it's not going to be a list that is set in stone anymore.
Now, is it like when you say inspiration, do you mean like actual inspiration die where like you
No,
can
no, no. I mean
like
like
apply an
inspiration
additional
as
die?
in no. I mean like as
I'm just
in
curious.
yeah, no. There are other mechanics for that, but no. What I
Okay.
meant is more along the lines of, oh, I want my character to be good at something, but I don't know what. Like, is swimming too narrow of a choice, or stuff like that.
Gotcha.
And so those skills are just going to be there as a sort of a list to inspire. Look, these are skills that might come up, or actions that your characters might undertake in a game. So like here's what they are. But that's one of the biggest change that we're going to have next time. Of course, what we're talking about tonight, for the most part, is what happened during the playtest and the rule set that we used back then. So, even for chat, if we're talking about stuff that didn't work out, like, don't worry, these things are probably going to change. But I want to avoid trying to go too much into like forecasting what I intend to change, because I'm still not sure. There's a lot of gray areas. So just because we might talk about something tonight doesn't mean it's going to make it in the next iteration, right? So before I give the mic on to, or we share the mic together, is the music too loud, or does no one hear the music? Not for the Zoom people.
Oh,
But for chat,
20.
my bad. Yeah, I think no one hears it because I think I didn't put it up properly. That's okay. That's okay. It's my bad.
Just like instant flashback to the to the playtest. It was just like, do I hear it? You do not hear that. You do though.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see the monster, but that monster's right in front of you.
Yeah, it's I just have like soft lo-fi music that I'm allowed to play on Twitch.
Hey,
That I normally have when I do the just chatting streams.
lo-fi beats to game design too.
Oddly enough,
Lo-fi beats the game design and or Run from Monsters with.
yeah, oddly enough, my soundtrack for One Frightful Night was an older album from A Perfect Circle.
I do not know music. A Perfect Circle.
Yeah, their album was, and I'll explain why after. So I have to make sure not to click on it. It's their 2003 album, 13th Step. This is an album that I had found when I first started jamming Call of Cthulhu. So all of the songs on it remind me of horror. Even though it's nothing, they have some songs that are kind of strange sounding, let's say. But yeah, it's that those were the lo-fi beats that I was working on OFN on. So
Now I'm just like, now I want to come up with like a Spotify playlist. It's just like grunge music to play Call of Cthulhu too. I just have this vision of like a 1990s themed like cosmic horror Seattle.
I was gonna say it needs to be in Seattle.
Yeah.
But that said, I apologize, everyone, if I cough. It shouldn't happen too much tonight, but sometimes it just... I'm still in like the last stretch of recovery, but if it happens out of the blue, I won't have time to mute myself for it. So, Yutsai, Tyler, what were the things you enjoyed about the playtest we did? Or that you remember?
I guess the thing at the frontmost part of my mind, which I thought was interesting and I used a lot, because I'm the only one who leveled up, was the pentagram. Pentagram was a cool twist. Kind of sectioned bits of your backstory / kind of like what makes you a human, what makes you a person, things you want, things you fear, hope, etc., for the other 2 points. So I always found it fun to like think about, oh, what does my character desire? What do they hope for? What are they afraid of? And how can I bring that memory, that motivation into the game, which kind of helps inform the other characters about how my character works, who they were, who they are, and also benefit mechanically from it. So I was both incentivized just from a roleplay perspective and a mechanical perspective. Because I believe once you hit all 5, you got to level up.
Yeah.
Was that the case?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, once you've you had to, well, it's hit all 5 and also survive the session.
And also survive, yes.
But
I really like the pentagram too. I will say that you're almost kind of encouraged to come up with more broad, if not nebulous, pentagram effects, just because, like, for example, if you say, for example, that your character is afraid of lizards, and there are no lizards present anywhere in any of the sessions, it makes it very difficult to level up. So yeah, sometimes that can be good if it's just like, oh, well, I don't want to necessarily have to confront a fear. Like, if there had been like a negative connotation to it, like you get like some kind of like what's the term I'm looking Nia for, like just a like a negative debuff for like facing something on your pentagram. That's kind of what I was concerned about. But like yeah, I did like when you like got to like either actualize a goal or confront something on the pentagram. Yeah, it's just I was very frustrated. There were no lizards that showed up.
Aw.
Just like I was so sure, okay, if I put lizard, there's gonna be like a demon iguana I'm gonna have to face, but I'll be ready for it.
See, that I did kind of like, I did make mine, I wouldn't say general or vague, but I made them in a way where I could like stretch it, or like I think one of my fears was like my childhood bullies. And I think I just used that as a basis of like, oh, well, this person is from my town and knew me when I was a kid. Them in this moment interacting with their kid is reminding me of my own past. I didn't actually meet a childhood bully, but I was able to reason and argue for it to like kind of work, and Simon accepted at the time. So
Yep.
Yeah, there is a part where it's like you're setting your own hoops to jump through, so you can make it too hard or you could make it too easy, which kind of I think maybe takes a little bit of fun out. And you're incentivized, like I said, to try to get through your pentagram because it does help you out in a lot of the aspects of the game. So that was a little, that's why I felt like, am I cheating? Am I doing this right? Should I be trying to hit these as fast as I can, or should I like limit it to 1 or 2 per session for pacing reasons?
Honestly, that is something I hadn't even thought of when I came up with it. Like, what if someone tries to gun for all 5 of them every session? I mean, normally I imagine that through, typical events that would happen in a game, and of course, what I mean by typical events is things that I remember, like in all the horror games I ran on over multiple years. What's the kind of stories that I went with, the kind of things I presented my players with, or situations they had to face. And I was like, you'll probably hit definitely hit 1. Probably 2. 3 might be like if you're lucky, if the situation presents itself. The thing about the narrowness, though, yeah, that's definitely a failure of the way the pentagram is presented. I'm gonna have to write like an entire section in the game anyway for like, well, first of all, here are ideas for what to put in the pentagram, but also how do you deviate from them? Because fear of lizards, and I think Elaine had fear of fire. Those were 2 of the hallucinations that I was keeping in store for you. So I remember the if you all went to the pawn shop, Elaine would have seen it burning by the time you were sort of searching the place. Like after a few minutes of being in there, a fire would have broken out in the back room or wherever near where Elaine was. And that would have definitely, not been helpful. The one for the lizard, I had intended, sorry about that, at one moment, I wasn't sure if it would have been in the arcade, and I ended up going with something else, or at the old man's house. What was his name again? Bad guy.
Yeah.
Old man, whatever.
Graham something. Arnold Graham. That's what it was. Like the hermit guy, right?
No. The villain, the guy who murdered the
babysitter.
Mr. Morris.
Mr. Morris.
Yeah, we don't count him. He's dead to me.
Yeah, dead to the world.
He's technically dead to all of us now.
Yeah.
I think.
One of the things about Mr. Morris was, so I wanted when you moved or when you entered like the secret door in the furnace, there would have been a snake there, like a python. But the thing is we were near the end. Everyone's clock had practically maxed out at that point.
Oh yeah, there were definitely other priorities at the time.
Yeah, and I felt like it would be a little cheap to have a hallucination that is literally one door away from Mr. Morris, because everyone would have he would have known that you were there. Definitely. So just because of like the talking that would have ensued or the whatever mess could have happened in that scene, and I was like, I feel like the discovery of Morris and everything he did, that's better than Snake. But yeah, that's kind of like the thing also is what I envision anyways, that your players' choices on the pentagram have to inform the GM, the narrator, that these are the things that they want to see. They want to be confronted by XYZ. So try to fit it in. Of course, there are some situations in which you might have to sit down with the GM and just go, okay, well, we're having a game in like Egypt. It's about going under a pyramid or something. You are afraid of hypothermia. It might work out like Night in the Desert, but like if you say I'm afraid of snow, it's gonna be a little harder. Let's switch it to like cold. I'm afraid of dying of cold, and all of a sudden that can work. Or you yourself, when the situation presents itself and you're like, oh, we have to spend the night out in the desert. I was afraid of snow, but that was because my character was afraid of dying of hypothermia. Could it work in that situation? The answer is, of course, yes. But there is a section that I need to put in to sort of, I think, convey what's in my mind to anyone who would read and or play the game. The
Random
book
thoughts.
is not at that point yet.
Random thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're doing suggestions, but I just had something.
Absolutely. Even chat, by the way, if you have questions or anything, go wild.
I just thought this might be interesting. What if instead of you trying to hit your own pentagram, because it's essentially you're setting your own hoops, you're setting your own goals, and it's kind of weird. what if you only get benefits, both narratively and mechanically, if you hit other people's pentagrams? Like I can activate Tyler's Hope. I get to know what it is, and it's like, okay, maybe there's a way I can like do something in the game that would like hit Tyler's Hope, and then they would get, or I would get a mechanical benefit or something from that. Or if I press them on their fear or something. May encourage more character interaction, also like being more invested in knowing how everyone's characters ticks, because you'll be actively looking at other people's pentagrams. It's like, okay, this character's afraid of lizards. Maybe it's just
Yeah, and
like
then
maybe asking if there's like a pet lizard in a room, like bringing it up in the game, but it's not from yourself. So you're not kind of like bringing up your own stuff, resolving it by yourself, and that's it. You're bringing something else into the scene or in the game, and then the other character will react to that because it's part of their pentagram.
that's interesting. One of the things I was toying with is kind of similar, but a little different. You would keep your own hoops, but one of the notes I had, I think it was following like our third session, was what if hitting your own pentagram didn't give you anything, but it gave the other, like you choose another player and they get the bonus.
Interesting.
I kind of like that because it actually ties into like as much as I do like the pentagram. I think the thing I liked the most was the survival dice, just because like
Oh, that's for nice.
I'm a huge fan of the idea of dice pools, where it's just like you have players who just like bartering over. No, I really need the survival die. I'll get it back to you later. I'll earn it back. I promise. I'll give it with interest. Especially because like when once we learned the mechanic that like if we didn't use up all the dice, or at least most of the dice, that we were going to lose some of them at the end of the session anyways, then it kind of became this mentality of like, all right, well, we should burn through these, but also like try to earn as many as you can along the way.
Mhm.
I really like that aspect of it. And I do kind of like the idea that with the pentagrams, like maybe, you know, succeeding in a pentagram doesn't just benefit you, but it benefits everybody. Like, I don't say it has to be like a survival die, but that's just instantly what I thought of.
Well, it's the one mechanic that was, I think, the most used in our game, probably the most accessible as well.
Oh yeah. Like we were burning through attributes, skills, like anything that gets survival dice.
Yeah. Also, because if we ran out, the monster would kill us.
Yep.
And it's one of the more memorable parts for me was at the very end where it's like, okay, there are multiple people who are about to die. We only have 2 survival dice. We need maybe 3 if everyone fails. How can we get more?
Mhm.
And that's when I'm just like staring at my pentagrams, like, okay, the hope gives us survival dice, right? So how do I bring this into the game where we can get a little more breathing room if we need it? So
Yeah. And I was instantly doing that whole like cost benefit, like, okay, there's 3 of us getting attacked. We only have 2 dice, and I'm one of the 3. And I was just like fully ready to commit, like heroic sacrifice.
I'm typing at the same time. That moment in the game was one that I definitely enjoyed. That sort of like climactic scene of, okay, well, we need to scrape everything, we need to look at everything, try to figure out a way to do something. The other when I ran it with my home group, they had a similar situation. In this case, they went to the farm that was like, you know, at the edge of the map, and the entities found them, and they basically had to try to flee, and they tried to run away in like one of their vehicles, and the vehicle got tipped over, like crashed or something, and the whole thing was, well, we can't run away. We know there's another vehicle nearby, but we have to backtrack to get it, which means that someone kind of needs to sacrifice themselves and or, you know, try to find a way to have enough survival dice that they could stand to lose like 2 or 3 before the rest of the group comes to get them. And I like these sort of moments where, you know, the stakes are high and the players know that, you know, they have a way to it's not bleak, it's not impossible, but it means that someone's gonna have to not necessarily sacrifice their characters as in die, but like they're gonna have to do something. Someone's gonna have to act. Someone's gonna have to pay the price. But yeah, if you have anything else that you remember that you enjoyed, just we can continue talking about that. But I would also want to know. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to comment since we were on the topic of survival dice.
Yeah.
I'm curious how a different monster would have affected the experience, because I do think the specific monster and their ability that if we were about to die, if they would take away survival dice and we were out of survival dice, we would just die.
Yeah.
I feel that really did bring survival dice even more up front and center. So I'm not sure if like I don't know any other examples of how abilities work.
I have 2.5 monsters. So the other one that I have finished, the Tunnelers, they're very strange. Underground dwelling, probably mutants, like translucent skin.
I think I remember those.
Yeah. They can dig through anything when they're in pitch black, or I can spend doom dice to have them, crawl on walls and ceilings and what have you. Their big thing is that they impart the bleeding condition, and bleeding gives you a cumulative penalty. So like, let's say you're hit with like bleeding level 1, then that's just a -1 on everything that you had. But then as the bleeding progresses, if no one can patch you up, essentially you bleed out and it's impossible for you to succeed any check, which means you have to burn survival dice in order to potentially succeed. But see, I'm just talking about it now, and I know of certain issues. Like, this monster was tested in a one-shot, so we didn't have a lot of time to go through everything. But for instance, because of how the survival dice work, there is no point for someone who's bleeding out to try to attempt or to succeed at any check. So the point was to burn survival dice. They wouldn't do it. And instead, that person would probably be taken out temporarily. The other players could try to save them. But like, without someone who knows first aid, for instance, this sort of becomes a battle of attrition in which the monsters eventually will win, because OFN is really skewed towards the monsters and not the survivors. But yeah, things need to change, because the survival dice pool is an interesting mechanic that I want to keep, but because it is communal, I don't want there to be a lot of monsters that can dig through it. The Tunnelers, for instance, could force you to burn survival dice just by causing the imperiled condition. That basically every monster can do it. So it's basically the moment when a character is faced with a monster, the monster succeeded on something, you are imperiled. And then you need to get the upper hand, if you will. With the entities, it was a lot harder, because they would grab you, right? They would grab you and they would start to drain your dice immediately. So I was like, I don't need to give imperiled on top of it, because that would be like 2 dice per turn.
Yeah, it's interesting that, like, I don't know if it's like, I forget if in one of the sessions it was like established that like we wouldn't be able to outrun these things, but it's really interesting that all our characters kind of like independently came to the conclusion it was like fight our way out of this, like fight for your life to keep those things off of us. Like, knowing that you couldn't win, but you still had to try and fight your way out to just try and delay them. it makes me wonder if like there is like a viable like play style for like, oh, monster, I'm going the opposite way, and just like booking it.
A
Yes.
I
monster
mean,
that
obviously
hunts
not
you,
every character is
maybe.
going to be able to do that, but like it's curious to think about.
If you want an idea for, say, because every monster has to have weaknesses, right? For every 2 traits you give a monster, you have to give them a weakness. And the entities, their weakness was they need to be latched on someone. That's one of the problem. Because once they're latched on someone, they're physical. You can do whatever you want to them. And
Okay.
you only need a successful skill roll, and the entity will disappear. In our game, the issue that we had in our game, the thing that happened is on the very first session, I rolled a 10, so there were 11 entities on the map.
Ooh.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's sort of an exception to the rule, right? Normally, you might have like 2 or 3, and entities can only hunt 1 character at a time. So let's say you have 3 entities up. You've got a group of 4 people, and it just so happens that they're hunting 3 of the players. If you manage to kick all 3 of them out, they're not going to come back. If you manage to hit 2 out, then you have to deal with only 1 left, and that entity cannot hunt someone it unsuccessfully fed from. So eventually, it would be driven out by the players. For the tunnelers, for instance, you needed you need light or a shotgun. Shotgun is going to sort of stop them in their tracks, right? What did you say?
Oh, I was just joking. Or a shotgun that shoots light, just Alan Wake style.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. But like basically their weakness was any character with a light source at +3 or higher can force an entire swarm of tunnelers back. Torches aren't enough, but set one on fire and the rest will give it a wide berth. And prolonged exposure, so an hour or more to bright light, such as daylight, will make them go into a seizure and then die. Moonlight is uncomfortable to them, so even at night, even if they try to track you, unless the GM has declared pitch black, you will always hear them coming. So they're a danger, but they're a danger so long as I burn through Doom Dice, because then you won't hear them coming because they're going to be tunneling underground. But if I don't,
I remember that from that session. Is like I was thinking it was just like, oh, it's pitch black. My character just couldn't see them, but like I think what it was that like I could hear them outside, but the reason I didn't see them was because they were underground when I looked outside.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's in certain, like, because we're talking about survival dice, and the mechanic is, you know, at the end of a session, you give half of the remaining dice to the GM. In the case of the tunnelers, if the GM doesn't have any survival dice because the players burnt through everything, mind you, they won't have a lot either next session. But that also means that the next session, because the tunnelers aren't completely silent, players might, with like a listen roll, hear them, because they sort of like have a high-pitched shriek that sounds like tinnitus when they're like under moonlight, for instance, or under light. That's how their voice works. So you have bonuses to hear them coming. So say you survive the first session, you have no more survival dice. We start the next session. They are going to be weaker this time than they were the first time. So that leaves perhaps one full session for players to figure out if they have a weakness and what it is and how they can exploit it. Now, because the session is easier, technically you don't burn through it a lot of survival dice, so the GM's going to get some back the session after, which means that the session after, the tunnelers are going to be a bit stronger. And so you have your sort of hail, right, your roller coaster that you have in a horror movie.
I will say on the subject of weaknesses, if I can interject right here,
Mhm.
a lot of the time we spent in the game was just trying to figure out how these things worked. And I think we did learn a lot. And there were some trial and error things. I there were some things though where we thought we knew the rules, but then things happened and we dismissed them. I don't know if it would be helpful to have definitive like touch points where we like know mechanically this is one of the rules of the monster, which provides more clarity to our actions. Because whether it was just deciding to take the car or deciding to split up, stick together, there were so many theories and so many time. I think just talking about what to do next took a large chunk of time too. Which is fun for horror, and trying to figure out the rules is fun. Don't get me wrong.
But it's also 2 seconds. It's also a bit of a bummer when all of your theories are wrong. Like I can understand that too. That you spend 3 hours theorizing about something, and at the end of your session you end up with like, well, we're still exactly where we were before. That is also an error on my part for the entities, because in the game the monsters have like an actual stat block, right? So like for instance, I'll copy paste one in the Zoom chat. Like this is one of the abilities that the tunnelers have. Tunnelers are virtually blind but possess an unparalleled sense of smell. Hide rolls are at a -3 unless the character can mask their scent. Once you know that, it's never going to change. The issue with the entities is that they literally have an ability that lets them screw the laws of physics. They can just do whatever they want. It costs a doom die, but that's the thing, is every time I would burn a doom die for this, it meant that whatever theories you had was now moot, because I could decide to change the rules of the game. But this is supposed to be special to that very thing, right? Because it's an extra planar, whatever, fourth dimension being, and not being able to corner them is sort of a cornerstone of their powers, right? Or the horror aspect of them is that the only way really to fight them is to essentially wait for them to try to feed on someone. So the goal is trying to find who they're going to feed from. Right. But that was also an error on my end, because for the game, like I told you at the end of the last session, I did not follow my own rule for the clock, the Doom from Another World clock, because it normally should have taken a lot longer.
I mean, I thought the pacing was fine. I guess I just bring it up because I'm not sure if there would be merit to having like a definitive, you putting like a literal something in chat saying this is one of the rules versus us trying to figure it out. For the monster that we faced last time, like if it's an exception because of its awesome abilities, that's totally cool. Dig it so much. But thinking of the very few horror movies I've seen, usually there is some like the alien doesn't like the flamethrower. You hear about a rumor or a school nursery rhyme of children singing the veritable rules of how this horror works, or you find this old person's diary and they explain some things are going on. Usually, yeah, because I guess for the first few sessions, I was definitely like trying to figure out like, okay, what are the rules to this creature? How does it work? And yeah, so bending reality definitely threw a curveball I wasn't expecting. Had fun with it. Don't get me wrong. Had fun with it.
Yeah. And I guess it also kind of depends on the type of like horror you're going for. Like like the fact that these were like extra dimensional beings, I kind of like that. Like we didn't really understand the rules, just because like it, like when you're both talking about like all the wrong guesses, like, oh, your theories are so wrong. It reminds me a lot of the weird judgmental Christian lady in Stephen King's The Mist, where she's just like, "Oh, the monsters need a blood sacrifice. We have to let the monsters kill one of us every day." And it's like just some like weird like theory that like no one really knows if that's how it works, but like
Mhm.
there seems to be some kind of weird connection, even though it's like totally wrong and it's just like purely anecdotal. But like it's you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, well,
there's
that was
always
what
like
Mr. Morris understood.
yeah,
In
yeah,
his
yeah,
mind,
yeah.
he was
That
like, "Oh, the reason they come back all the time is because they haven't finished the job with me. They're hunting me, so I need to find like some sort of bait for them."
yeah. That's also like a bit of metagaming, but that's also like why Robert was like, "Oh, that theory's stupid." Like, no, we're not doing that. I've seen that movie.
You're a silly old man.
Actually, I can't remember. I don't think The Mist actually came out by that point, but I digress.
No, the game was in 1996. The Mist wasn't out.
Yeah.
I don't
Um,
know. I
Different
don't know
horror
how you
movie.
keep
There's
your
been other
history
horror movies with
straight.
that trope.
It's all one blob of time for me. I had to keep Googling, did this exist? When did this come into existence?
Which
yeah,
Super
Is this a
Mario
thing
games are
yet?
out by now?
yeah,
Did they invent Rocky Road ice cream yet? Or
yeah. It's a thing playing in the past. Definitely. Next game is going to be either so far out in the past that we don't care about it, like we're playing in like 1830, or it's going to be like modern, so we don't have to care about that either. But yeah, no, I like the idea of having sort of a literally like a diary with, okay, well, this is the monster that we're facing, and you keep it throughout the game, right? And it's always the same sort of a meta diary of like, okay, well, we've managed to learn this, and then we drove the monster away. But the GM could say like, oh, there's 3 more things you didn't see about them, and then
oh
when
yeah, like you
fill out,
show them how many lines are grayed out. And it's like this is all the stuff you don't know about the monster.
yeah. But if they do, and you fill out kind of like a pentagram, right? You fill out the entire journal entry, then it gives you something. Because
Oh, yeah,
technically,
that'd be great.
yeah, because technically, since this game is not Hunter, you're not supposed to hunt down the monsters. You're supposed to survive it, and maybe sometimes like drive it away. In essence, survive, and then move on. And it's anthology or continuous play, depending. So when you know everything about the monster, GM's not gonna put it back in a game. They might, because that could always be interesting to to wonder like, oh wait, is this something that we've seen before or not? But once you know everything about the monster, it no longer is horror. It's kind of sci-fi. It's suspense, a thriller, or science fiction. Because you know it now. Like, to some extent, Call of Cthulhu, the stories, right, the books, it's just sci-fi. They're just aliens. That's it. Like, when you think about it, the only reason it's horrible is because the protagonists, setting all the racism aside, the protagonists aren't able to understand what it is. I mean, the author couldn't understand that people could have different skin color. But the fact that they can't understand this, and they're like, it doesn't make sense, that's what's driving them crazy. That's why you have cults, right? Because they think that to appease Yog-Sothoth, you need to do XYZ. Probably not. Yog-Sothoth is just like a giant alien that travels through time. Like, Cthulhu is not even unique. It's just one member of a species. To us, Cthulhu is dangerous because one member of that species can wreck the entire planet. But when you think about it, it's just Godzilla. It's sci-fi. If you understand what it is, it's sci-fi.
Yeah, it's always interesting, like, because like, and that's part of the fun of like a horror game. I feel is like figuring out like what level of horror stratification you're playing at is just like, okay, is the bad guy like god level, or are they just some weird like zombie thing? And it's just like there's always something in between, but like it's figuring out like I do kind of like that. That's kind of like a very human condition. Is like kind of like sizing up your opponent, so to speak. Like just like figuring out, okay, well, where am I in this new like reality that I'm living in?
Well, it's because, from an evolutionary perspective, you need to know where the tigers are.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't really help that like Homo sapiens kind of set the tone with like, oh hey, other human species, wipe them out. Homo erectus gone,
Yeah.
Neanderthal gone.
But it's also like I think it's a very just life, like living being situation. Like if you introduce a squirrel to a different environment, squirrel is going to check for danger. Squirrel's probably not going to understand that, I don't know, put a squirrel in like a swamp. Like it won't understand at first that why is the ground not ground. But it'll probably try, go up a tree, go down, try to figure out what's safe, what's not, and then get eaten by an alligator. But yeah, I like the idea though of chronicling what you've encountered and having it actually do something. It's something that I like in games, like to have a even just as a mechanic, right? Things that you need to check off. The pentagram is one of them, right? That I really, really enjoyed making and inserting in the game. Because it's like, okay, well, I know that this, and I know what it does, and I would like to complete them. So I might toy with that for for the next game.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea too, if only just because like you have the option, like depending on what kind of like monsters and story you're working with, that it like the path can kind of diverge into either like Until Dawn's like kind of codex journal of like, oh, the monster has bulletproof skin versus like more like cosmic horror, like I don't know what it wants. Does it even want? Just like more like, kind of I can't understand this thing, but I'm just writing everything I observe anyways.
Quick tangent. Saw in the news yesterday that there's a Until Dawn movie in the works.
Is there really?
Yeah. Just kind of weird because you can just watch someone play the game and that's a movie.
Yeah, that's also like a very like video game industry thing. Like, well, we have to make a movie now. We have to be like Hollywood. Like, no, we have the game. And all the actors are already in the game.
Well, that's it. It would be interesting to see if they take the real, like the same actors. I don't think they will, but it would be amazing to have them, basically you have a shortened, a 2.5 hour, shortened version of like one playthrough, right? That someone ahead of time decided what the made the decisions of who would live, who would die. But yeah, speaking of things about characters and hitting points and stuff, I am I don't remember who gave the idea last time, but having a breaking point for a character, because during our sessions you were all probably as players confused about what was going on. As players playing characters, you knew that your characters had to be scared. But how much can your character take before they just go, you know what? That's enough. I think one of the things that inspired me for that was Yutai, when you decided to just leave town.
Yeah. Playing up one of my pentagram parts, and it's like, I could leave in a huff. That's what an asshole would do.
I have
in a horror
car.
movie.
Why am I still here?
Yeah, fuck all of you. I'm leaving.
But like that would be normal, right? It would be a point where your character is like, no, that's it. I've had enough. I don't want it to be madness-inducing like Cthulhu, right? Where it's you lost your sanity, then thus your character is now afraid of penguins. Not saying that because I watched Lindy's stream last night. But like that's the thing is in Cthulhu, there's like a definite point where your character is like, okay, I'm fucked. I know that if I reach 0 sanity, I'm no longer playable.
Like a stress
Whereas,
point or a stress meter.
yeah, kind of like having something where if you hit that mark in a game, then it's not that you're no longer playable, it's that maybe something is going to be out of reach for you. Maybe you just don't gain survival dice anymore. You can still play, you can still make skill checks, you can still hit your pentagram with everything, but your character passed its, like, their own point of no return. Something like that. I need to
You could also make it like a quasi health bar. I mean, like how some people work better under pressure. Like maybe rolls get easier for you the higher the stress you are, but that makes you closer to your breaking point. But yeah, as far as like me deciding to leave, my only like worry, like I trust you as a GM, and what was the title given to you? Dark Chronicler or something like that.
What?
Chronicler, I think was
Chronicler.
like,
Chronicler is the name of the. I think it's. I keep changing it, but I think it was Chronicler. Yeah, it's Chronicler because it's supposed to be anthologies. Yep.
Yeah. I trust that as a chronicler. If you didn't want me to leave, you would figure out a way for my character to like return to the group somehow, smacking him, so to speak. So I felt comfortable leaving. Though that is always a fun issue to deal with, like splitting the party and then like, yeah. I mean,
but
even
that's
if we
what
could,
I want
if we
in this game,
right, it's very horror trope, which is like, yeah, this would be the move, right?
yeah,
Even if we
you're
could
going
leave
to
the
make
town.
if you're going to make bad decisions in a horror game, do them at the first episode, at the earliest opportunity.
But I'll add this though: the fact that you started hallucinating when you tried to drive out of town, that was written in the monster stat block way before the game started. Like it wasn't a way for me to, rope you back into what was happening. The entities actually locked down an area. And anyone trying to leave, NPCs included, they just stare into the air until in their mind they went back to that place, in which case they snap out of it. Or if someone snaps them out of it, but there's a health risk there. It's just strange if the game goes on too long, especially let's say we're playing in New York and this is happening. Because you're just going to have thousands of people lined up in like a neat little square somewhere. Because it's all the people that tried to leave. It could be cool as like the start of a game. To be like, hey, look at this strange phenomenon. But it's something that needs to be used carefully with in regards to the entities anyway.
I mean, even if I could leave, like I can imagine if we were facing the tunnelers, like my car would just drive into a hole in the middle of the road, and then I'd like have to like try to find my way out through like a tunnel which would lead back to town, or
or you suddenly notice in at night driving in your headlight, one of them passes by, and then you see that there's a chunk of them heading into town, and maybe your character goes, "Oh, I need to warn the others."
Yeah,
I like the idea of being alone in a tunnel too. The only thing with that is, and that might be how it's built, when your character is taken out temporarily because they've been captured or one of your stat went down to 0, other players have to have a chance to come save you, which is harder to do when no one knows. Like there's a bit of metagaming at that point where it's, well, we don't really know, like we know he left town, and it'll just so happen we'll find the exact route he took and find that tunnel.
We could implement survival dice in a creative way here, where like you have a list of horror movie tropes and you get to check each one off the list, and like leave for no good reason, or leave after an argument. All right, we get a survival dice for that. But also there's like a list of horror movie tropes we could purchase as well, like suddenly have a hunch someone's in danger or something like that. A way to narratively explain stuff.
Is that something you said before? Because I already have it written. I think it is.
Oh, maybe. I
think it is.
I just talk a lot.
No. But again, we're repeating some of the stuff we said at the end of the last session, right? But it's just cool to see that, like, almost word for word, I have it written down.
Oh. Maybe I did. I can't remember. It's been a while. I'm a little fried from work too.
Uh,
Uh,
we had to postpone a couple of times anyway, so that's something that I knew going in tonight.
just 11 more months till Christmas.
Please. Oh yeah, speaking of 11 more months, I'm thinking of holding the next playtest probably around summer,
Ooh.
like June, around there.
Oh, it's going to be at a summer camp.
Could. That could
I
be
know
interesting.
it's very
I
Texas Chainsaw
was
Massacre.
thinking, it's like, what if, how would a monster look like if it was just a serial killer? How would their abilities look like?
I haven't included them yet in it. But it's, I mean, all the traits that they have are based on tropes from movies, right? So they would probably have, as a serial killer, like a way to sneakily move about, but then if you spend a doom die, they can appear in a scene even though logically it wouldn't make sense for them to have reached that place in that amount of time. It could also be I mean, so the one issue that I have with the serial killer is they are very, very killable. And kind of well, what you see in like Friday the 13th and everything is, especially in the first movies, so long as you don't have survivors from one movie to the other, it takes a bit for some of them to stop fearing and try to do something. But at the same time, unless they're in a place where they cannot get like a weapon, then that becomes a lot dangerous. But I mean, even at a summer camp, I mean, you could probably grab a baseball bat. You might be still scared about the big guy with the machete, but if you have a baseball bat, you might be a little less scared of the big guy with the machete.
I guess you'd have to have like meta abilities, like inhuman toughness, where you like hit him with the baseball bat and it breaks over his head, but he doesn't flinch.
Yeah,
I was
something
instantly
like
thinking of like Jason or
Yeah,
Solomon Grundy, just like we're like, no, you can't kill this guy. Think of something else.
Yeah. Well, I want the players to still be able to like kill the monster in a way similar to like the first Alien, right? It took everything for Ripley to get it out of the airlock, but it still worked.
Oh gosh, one frightful night at a space station. That'd be a game.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
That's the one horror movie I've
never
been able to watch twice.
Never
again.
Haven't watched it yet. I probably should, just for like the culture of it. But
Wait,
yeah, I do enjoy how horror movies can be like. There's so many like interesting locations that can take place in. School on lockdown, abandoned mining tunnels, a summer camp, a space station.
Yeah, first time I ever watched the first Alien movie was when I was 25 years old, and yeah, I was still too young for that movie. It was terrifying.
Given the meteorological situation in the States right now, it could also be like during a snowstorm.
Power's going out, you have to leave to go power up the generator. Oh, that's
and like if I recall, like the giant snowstorm we had here in '98, where the army was dispatched, it was hell. But the thing is you have entire neighborhoods that are unpowered but also empty, and the streets aren't walkable, they're covered in ice. Just trying to run away is almost impossible. And then the army cordoned off, sections. So you also have that thing where, if you try to warn the military that, oh, there's a killer or a thing on the loose, they're like, yeah, you're still not going anywhere.
Character-wise, we could be a group of burglars who know that the neighborhood's been deserted, and we're trying to like get a cash in while people are gone before the snowstorm really hits, and then we get snowed in ourselves.
There's there could also be, on top of the horror aspect, like just having burglars or raiders, you have like this secondary, kind of like in Until Dawn, that you have this secondary villain that for the first part of the game, you think that this is the main villain. I'm trying really hard not to spoil a like 12-year-old game.
It's a good
Also,
one.
if you haven't played Until Dawn
is.
at this point, go play the game, please. It's so good.
I played it for the first time last year, so please.
No, yeah, you're good, Simon. Don't worry. You're fine.
But yeah, it's just interesting to also have to think about that, like that other very, very mundane threat, but it still is a threat that exists. If you're a burglar, like if you're a group of people, of looters, and then, you know, that threat could just be like, yeah, there's this one squad car of cops that patrols the place, and they're the type of, they're not gonna care, they're not gonna put you in jail, they're just gonna gun you down if they find you. Like, they're looking for sport. But those are easy to, well, compared to a monster, they might be easier to dodge, to hide from, but you always have to think about that. So yeah, I also, there's one game that I want to try with One Frightful Night where we go old Romero zombies.
Oh, the very slow Walking Dead.
Yeah, but like, make it frightful. Because zombies aren't, I don't know, they're not scary anymore. Unless you give them something that makes them, you know, move super fast or whatever. The slow crawling zombie has been overdone, but it's a challenge that I want to have, to give myself, to be like, okay, well, can we do old school zombies, ghouls, but in a way that...
Yeah, I will say on that, like, I do like when, like, old school monsters, like zombies, like, where you have some tropes that are subverted. I'm just remembering this one D&D game I was in, and like there's like a squad of zombies sent after us, and one of our players was just like, okay, easy, I just shoot it in the head, and the DM's like, okay, it still moves towards you, and just the wave of terror that just came over the table when we realized, oh, a headshot doesn't kill them. Okay, cool.
And they're the type that
And
we need
just,
to
like,
cut into pieces.
No, yeah. And quick side note, I am a huge fan of World War Z, so just like the way that the zombies are set up for the Battle of Yonkers is just very well done, because it does like it. I like that it like presents the threat of zombies as not like individual, but as a group, because you're realizing, oh, there's literally millions of these things, and I'm just one person, and I have to kill them all. And it's just like the way that the Battle of Yonkers was a whole mess, but I like that it just like sets up those completely asymmetrical odds.
I really enjoyed the book. Haven't seen the movie.
Oh yeah, the movie's just it's fast zombies. So like I like that, like World War Z is like specifically slow zombies and still like takes them seriously as a threat, just because the pandemic has been allowed to spread to such an extent, just because no one was taking it seriously at first. And I remember when the book came out, I was like, oh, that's, no one would take that seriously. You know, people would obviously do something about a pandemic right at the beginning, and it's like 2020 is hindsight.
Yeah, good reading. Highly recommend you go read World War Z. It's a great book.
It was
It's a
required
lot of
textbook for one. It was a required textbook for one of my poli-sci classes for a reason. It's very well written.
Yeah, it's a bunch of what'd you call them, short stories? It's like a bunch of like excerpts of people's lives. With
Yeah,
some
it's
continuity.
like, yeah, it's like different interviews, like kind of cobbled together, that provides like a kind of a cohesive timeline. So yeah, it's very like, I actually like that description. Yeah, it's very anthologized. So
yeah, so very easily digestible. Highly recommend.
On that, let's take a quick break. I need to get some more water because, as you can see, throat's going to go. When we come back, we'll do things we would like to see in the game.
Ooh, wish list.
I know we did a bit, but yeah, it's gonna be the stars and wishes time. We'll be right back. hello, we're back.
Mm.
Talking about stuff. We changed our places. Except me, apparently. I'm still in the corner. But hello, everyone, we're back. And like I said, we're doing wish lists. So for those of you just joining us, hi, Critwitch. And we're doing the Post-Mortem for One Frightful Night. The horror game that I started designing about a year ago. So, guys, what are the things you would like to see or would have liked to see when we played? Both. I mean, Tyler, you
Feel free
talked
to
about
start,
something
Yusai,
during
'cause
breaks.
I'm
You can
still
say it again.
compiling a list.
Okay. Most of my comments are just kind of building off what I've experienced and just like things I noticed. Like I think I mentioned a couple before, like a literal list of tropes I could play into because I love doing that. That would either benefit us mechanically in some way, or I mean, honestly, just like a little guy's like, hey, these are things that happen in horror movies. Go nuts. That's always fun.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask you a question, Tyler, as well. This is something that I think it's a comment that Anna made when we were making characters, so it's way back at the start of everything. But our very first playtest, I had made pre-gens that were basically based off of horror movie trope, like archetypes of character, the final girl, the jock, the whatever.
Oh, yes.
And thinking about that, I might actually bring them back.
I think it's helpful.
Yeah, but just as an archetype. So like you choose...
having sample characters is definitely a good idea.
Oh no, I'm thinking not as a sample character, like as part of character creation. Like let's say you choose the jock thing.
Oh.
The jock is going to be, you know, if you're a student, college, blah blah blah, football player, blah, blah. But if you're someone like older, you might be like just someone who's into sports. You might be a pro athlete or whatever. And this would influence, like give you a bonus in something, minuses in something else, where it's like, okay, well, maybe it flavors like part of your pentagram because it gives you something like different. Like instead of being hope, fear, something, shame, something. Wow, I really don't remember all of them.
It is.
I wrote this game, y'all.
I have hope, desire, fear, regret,
Fear,
shame.
Yeah, shame and regret are at the bottom. So you have, you know, your positive, neutral, negative. But it could be interesting that, you know, oh, you have. So you were mentioning earlier, character that works better under pressure. Like that could be a trait of the final girl archetype. So like as things are bleaker and bleaker, your character is the one that has the most chances of surviving because
I do like attaching traits to like archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
The one comment though, like just remembering some of our characters, they seem to be kind of almost built off those archetypes, like those archetypes having grown up and not always in a good way. Like my character, I kind of envisioned as being the loner in a classic archetype kind of role. But then he grew up embittered. He's not really a loner anymore per se. I don't think that would classify my character, but that's kind of his basis. So I'm not sure if that would like pigeonhole character concepts too much. But I do like I do like the idea of archetypes and traits
like
attached to them.
I like the idea of archetypes if there's still an option to do almost like a custom archetype kind of thing. Like you have those like, you know, kind of 5 core archetypes in addition to being able to create a custom character.
Like pick from a list maybe, or
just because like I don't necessarily like the idea of like, you know, locking in a player to like, okay, you have 5 character classes, so to speak, and you have to choose from those 5.
I don't want to do that. What I would rather do is like have. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I do like the idea of like to avoid them just becoming sample characters. Like there is like some kind of like mechanical bonus to choosing one of the already established archetypes, but also giving players the option to just like go off at a completely different like direction with like a sixth option. I think that's like kind of a good balance there.
Yeah, the goal for me would be to have maybe like 12 to 15 different archetypes. And then be like, look,
okay.
if it doesn't work out, just take the mechanical bonus of like one that you feel is the closest to your character. You don't need to be called the jock. It's just the jock is going to be your maybe physical character who's good at being consistent, let's say. Whereas
yeah, and I do like that. It's like you're establishing like the mechanics of the character, but not necessarily their personality. That's what
no, that's it. It's more like of a flavor. Or like the cheerleader would probably be someone who has something that goes into helping other people. You don't have to be an actual cheerleader, but we know that horror movies often have one.
Right. Sorry, I'm giggling because I caught myself trying to raise my hand like I'm back in class and going for the awkward head scratch instead.
Excuse me, Mr. Chronicler. Mr.
Chronicler.
Technically
Mr.
on
Wandering
my Zoom,
DM.
But on my Zoom, I've activated so if you raise your hand, it should detect it as a raised hand. I know the trooper did the heart sign and it popped a bunch of hearts the other night. So
that's cool.
I don't know if I have to do it like per session or whatever. It kind of surprised me. By the way, hello Raiders.
Oh, hello. I'm not sure about like archetypes because I think you're redoing like stats or whatever those are becoming. But I did have a thought, and once again, a wild random Yutsai thought you can completely disregard if you don't like it.
I'm writing everything down.
It comes in two parts. One, what if the archetype was just mainly the ability? Like there's a special ability associated with that archetype. Like you said, I think the final girl working better under pressure is a great archetype. Or a jock being able to, if there's a physical roll they have to make that requires strength, dexterity, or athleticism, it's something that they could naturally do without having to roll. So if you're near the jock and you need to like lift a heavy garage gate, then that's something the jock should be able to do, right? Taking kind of notes from Powered by the Apocalypse. What if, and this might just throw in this, this is the part where you can throw it away if you don't like it.
No, go.
Kind of like how people have different facets of their personality, things that are emphasized more than others. What if this core ability that the archetype bestows you actually takes the place of one of the points in your pentagram? Like the final girl seems to be a character about hope. So instead of having a hope that they can write and like do, that's just kind of blocked out for them because they're a hopeful character archetype. And that ability is there instead. And they have to rely on the other four, which kind of fleshes out their character.
Mind you, it could also be something that they need to hit. Like that's flavored to their archetype specifically.
What do you mean they have to hit it? Like they need to hit their hope in order to activate this ability kind of thing?
Not necessarily, but activating the ability would hit that point of the pentagram, is what I mean. Like, so as the jock, it's like you have to... One of your 5 points is feat of strength, let's say. So it can replace whatever you want. Like, you pick one of the 5. One of the 5 becomes sports. It could also, and I'm just throwing the idea out there, right? Because it could also help players who have like a harder time finding 5 traits for the pentagram. So they're like, oh, I don't have any idea for the shame, so I'm just going to replace it with this one. And then as you redo your pentagram, you can like flip them around and be like, oh, this time I have a shame, so I'm going to remove like my hope and keep it. Like you always have to keep one.
Oh yeah, it kind of like fills out part of your character. It is a part of you, so it kind of fills in one of your slots, even if you want them all, or kind of like I think Tyler said, if you can't think of enough, it can help you out there too.
I'm just looking at chat for a second.
I do like that idea of like making like the pentagram a bit more modular, like where like depending on where the concept is, it like totally changes its meaning. Like sports and shame could be like, oh, I'm worried I'm not as strong as I brag I am, but versus desire, which is like, oh, I really want to, do well in this field and, make my family proud. And like, I like that because it's like, it keeps the concept broad enough that like players can kind of like work out what they want to do with it, while also allowing it to kind of fit in different areas of the pentagram. Ooh, I like this idea. I'm
I like
excited.
just thinking about our own characters. Like, there's some very cool like movie tropes, character tropes that like, what if there's a trait called Guardian, where you take it when there's someone very important to you in life, and having it means no matter what, you have a sixth sense and you know when the person you're a guardian of is in danger.
Mhm.
Like Hannah's
Hmm.
character with that trait makes absolute sense being a mother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you hit that point, let's say, by taking the fall, or taking the brunt of something to protect that other person. That's
Yeah.
part of your, like, to level up, you need to act as a guardian at least once, you know?
Definitely. Fulfill your role in the game, in the story.
Yeah,
that's that sort of thing. It does kind of lend itself to you would probably need like 15 or 20, like a list to choose from. But I mean, as broad of things of being like, as you said, athletic, you can just do a strength-based thing without having to roll for it.
That's
Or
it.
yeah. I think that'd be a fun brainstorming session.
I just thought of one that's kind of funny. It works if we're doing a like an anthology type of thing, because I have mechanics in brewing in my mind of how to do the anthology type of thing, and it's inspired a lot by Sandman, which I will be playing tomorrow on Trooper's channel as the second part. So Sandman is a narrativist game that came out in the 80s. It crashed because it was 30 years too early. If it had come out today, people would be all over it. But the first adventure that we're playing is basically, it's a book with 4 adventures. For some reason, we switch characters in each adventure, but we retain all the memories of the previous ones, as if we're trying to figure out like what the overarching meta plot is of like, why are we remembering these things? Like, why does my character know everything about the 1980s, but we are playing in 1940s Cairo? Like, how strange is that? But it's got cool little mechanics for when you change your character over to the next one, where you can retain your skills. And I just thought of one, because one of my ideas is when you survive a game, right? And it could be when you hit like your archetype thing, it means that you get to carry something over to your new character. But then I just thought, okay, so one of the trope is the first person to die. So if you are the first person to die, congratulations. You hit your pentagram, you're going to get something later. But also, you died. Like, if we're playing a one-shot, it's funny, it's cool. Might not be so cool if you die, like, first session out of 4.
I mean, you could just put a clause that says only
for one shot.
selectable
Or
for a one-shot or for a multi-session
Or
game.
you immediately come up with your new character, and the fact that you were the first victim, your special ability is you get to learn something about the monster, like a truth about the monster.
That's a pretty big edge.
The Leroy Jenkins achievement.
Yeah, but you
Start out
have
at
to be the
big
first to die.
disadvantage,
That's
but-
the thing, is the GM will not maybe actively try to kill you. You have to put your character in danger. Like, you're gonna have to be reckless. You're gonna have to be the one that goes like, I'll lock myself in with a match and a gasoline tank. What could go wrong?
Any ideas for what Robert Harker's ability would have been, Tyler?
Oh, like if he actually had died?
Not if he had
just
died,
like as an archetype, because you
Yeah,
were
like-
basically the cop, right?
Oh.
without a gun, as we found
yeah.
out.
They don't need
Like, where's
guns
your
in
gun?
Canada. Come on.
We were so upset with you.
Yeah, because like if we're talking about like the classic like 5 horror archetypes, it doesn't really fit into those. But yeah, there always is like like, or there often is like a police officer or a security guard who's just like, Mr. Orderly, just like, all right, you kids behave now. Just and like, I really was playing him as like someone who like, was a little bit naive and therefore very susceptible to the monster, but also a guy who like, really is like trying to protect people and therefore takes his job with like solving puzzles seriously. He may not be the best at solving puzzles, but Gosh darn it if Robert doesn't try.
No, but as an archetype, you always have this one character that's like more inquisitive than the others.
I suppose that's fair.
There's always
So
one
yeah, I
that
guess
goes
like
like, oh,
if,
no, no,
if
no,
we're
we
going based
need to
off like
know.
if you're going based off like the like original 5 like archetypes of horror films, he's probably more like the nerd character, if anything, just because like there's also a bit of that like hyperfixation, but also just like the nerd tends to be more a lot more loyal. It's just like I'm looking out for my buddies. I'm
Mhm.
gonna make sure we all live. Maybe he doesn't, but the rest of the gang sure is.
Yeah, for at least Chad. Like I said, I think he would have been more of the loner, but he's definitely much more like, I guess, the criminal, if criminal can be an archetype. Get their just
Yeah.
desserts or they turn over a new leaf. If
Well,
I
it's the
could make
redemption
up
arc.
yeah, or it could have gone the other way, depending. I decided near the end, it's like I'd like to live, please.
Yeah, but it
if I
also
could
tied
have-
in with like Hannah's character's child.
Right. Yeah, I
Charlie,
did
where-
use my pentagram to base those decisions. I did just want to be a dick for we can swear, right? I can say dick.
Yes, all my streams are
Okay.
18. Don't worry about that.
All right. If
I
I could have chosen an ability for Chad, and I don't know like how powerful or balancing, I guess that's a question for you later if you decide to go with the mechanic. But something like knowing, because the whole concept was this guy got climbed higher in life by finding dirt on other people and kind of bossing people around. So and yeah, I guess having it would have like maybe shortcut to the end a lot quicker, but knowing if someone's lying or like knowing if someone's hiding something would have been really handy and kind of cool.
I mean, would it really have gotten you faster to the ending, say, if you realize that Mr. Morris is hiding something? You would have probably gone into his house sooner, but it doesn't matter. The game ended when all 10 entities were banished. You would have saved the kid earlier. I mean, cool. Or you would have gotten to his place, and if it was before he asked the kid to leave home and no, because that was years ago, before he took control or he kidnapped Hannah's son, he might have turned into an ally. Like, hey, you're hiding something, what it is, and what is it? And then he's like, oh, I'll bring you into my secret room in my basement where I have like this entire conspiracy board about these things from another world. And then you discover the freezer full of dead bodies.
We could have fixed them before he started kidnapping kids. Yeah,
Nope.
but I think
No, he
for
did kill the two
ability-wise-
Wesson children. So
Yeah. He was
I guess he was too far
guys.
gone at that point. If for
we could have
trait
saved him, he'd only killed 2 people at that point.
2 is forgivable. 2 we could brush under the rug. But for trait or archetype kind of abilities or roles, I think the 2 things to focus on that are important are it fulfills the fantasy or the idea of the character, like a police officer using their police authority and people listening, or a mother knowing when their child's in danger, or a criminal knowing when other people are being shifty as fuck. And yeah, it fulfills that fantasy and it makes them more effective, or like it lets them succeed at something.
Yeah.
Though I may be speaking from a point because we failed a lot in the game, so it's like more successes, please.
No, but that comment is very important because it goes to show that one of the failure of the older system was the intent did not work with how it was put into effect. Like, the intent was burn your survival dice. Ergo, I'm gonna make sure that failure is way more common than success. But then, yeah, that doesn't work. It's very frustrating. And at the same time, there is a part of the mentality that I have with One Frightful Night where it's you're supposed to be in charge of your character's survival or death. Like, you're the one who burns the stats. You're the one who burns the dice. You're the one who's going to ultimately decide when your character is going to die. So if you have agency over that, why not also have agency over successes? Like, no, this is something that my character should succeed at. And I agree with you. Like, there are moments where, you know, even if you were like an expert in something, you still had like a 40% chance of failing. That kind of sucks. Like, you would still need to burn dice. And if you're unlucky, you roll your first die and it's like a 1, and you're like, oh, great, I have to roll another one. So this,
and
of
that
course,
kind of works with like using the old like skills based system where like you have like my character was an expert, so I had like 3 skills that I was actually skilled in, but one of them I was an expert level in. It was charisma. Not many options to use charisma in this particular scenario, but sometimes it works out that way. And it's just like, yeah, you know, like there's some things you're really good at, but if they're not applicable, you gotta adapt.
Yeah. The idea that I have right now that I'm kind of playing with, this is very unofficial, is that there will be, sort of to mimic the pentagram, there will be 5, let's call them resources. Used to be called stats, right? If you want an equivalent.
Right.
You have 5 resources. And any skill check in the game is always dependent on one of those 5 resources. You can spend a point to succeed automatically, or you can roll. And each resource has, let's say, agility as a resource. Each resource has like 1 or 2 or 3, depending on, you know, leveling up mechanics, skills attached to it, or like actions. So like agility, you also have running as a specialty. So if you have to run away from something, you could always be like, well, I'm going to try a check, knowing that I have more chances of succeeding because I'm skilled, or I can just burn a point of agility to succeed automatically. So people that are skilled at something might want to do the skill check instead of the burning, which makes sense, because if you're good at something, you should be able to do it more often. And of course, the chances for success would be way higher than 60%. They would be more around like the 80% type of area, you know, that you're very good at running away, but, you know, maybe something happens. And then, of course, you have survival dice to add to that and all that. So, but this is something that is very new to as an idea. It's something that I had, I think it was like last week that I started thinking about that. I was like, oh, maybe that could be a thing. We'll see. I'm not married to the idea at all. If you have thoughts about it, I would love to hear it.
I did have a thought about the relationship between resource spending, the rate of succeeding and failing, and getting closer to death. The game by design, as I experienced it, is you get closer and closer, and as you say, you have agency of your own death. The more resources you expend, the more likely you are to fail. Which, as a player, it doesn't feel great. And beyond that, it makes me want to try doing stuff less, because I know I'm not likely to succeed, and if I fail, something bad could happen, and I'm going to get closer to death anyway. So I just kind of like maybe let the other people do it, or maybe I ask other people to perform an action for me. So it does kind of like put a damper, because like if I'm so weak, it's like, well, then I'm just kind of like here hoping to not die. If there was like a system in place where maybe meta narratively, like there's 3 steps to death. Everyone starts on the first step, and we are going through stuff. We spend resources. We're fighting for our lives. We have a moment of peace, and I'm like wounded. I'm tired. Player Yutsai decides, okay, right now I'm useless. I want to be useful, because if I'm this useless, if I'm in a fight or something, I could actually die. I'm going to accept I'm 1 step closer to death, and all my resources come back, and I am back to fighting shape. I can do things. I can use more of my stats / resources. I feel useful. I can try to do stuff and have a chance of succeeding. And then it happens again. It's like, okay, once again, almost near death. I am now 1 more step closer to death. This is like the last step or something. And then that last step, I don't know. Maybe it's the same thing. Maybe it's like a final stand or something, where at the end of the scene, you will die, but you have a chance to do a heroic sacrifice or something. Or it's that last kick of the mine cart. dragging you down with the monster or something like that, where you have
Yeah,
to
and
die at the end of the scene.
that's very much what Robert was aiming for, like in the last episode, is just like, okay, I'm probably gonna die. I want to make sure it counts.
That's interesting because I hear you, and then I start thinking about, well, that breaking point thing I talked about before could definitely be one of those
stress
states.
mechanic? Yeah,
well, not
definitely.
necessarily to unlatch it from the stress mechanic completely, but to have, let's say, your 3 states are like fine, breaking point, and sacrifice. I'm just throwing names out there, right?
Right.
Every time you move to a different state, you choose when you want to move to that different state. You heal certain you might heal like certain stats, or your archetype ability also increases, like changes to something else. So you were good under pressure, say, so that, let's say, mechanically meant that the final girl has a +2 on everything when she's at fine, but then a +5 at breaking point, and then a +10 during, like, or fuck it, because the scene sacrifices, you succeed automatically. So, but maybe her HP is lower at the breaking point part than it is at fine. So if you want to like change state immediately at the start of the game, it's like cool, but you might also not be that archetype if you go too fast through it.
Right.
Sort of like
it doesn't have to be.
Well, I mean,
it doesn't have to be a complete recovery or anything. It's just like I did feel at certain points like I think someone had a wound or something and they were just getting these penalties to their roll.
Yep.
Once again, it's like kind of like pushing against the ever-present chance of failure. Also, just a side note, for Final Girl ability, I feel like if someone who chose Final Girl as an ability goes to step 3, they lose the Final Girl ability because then if they're sacrificing themselves, they're not the Final Girl.
You kind of fail.
Or maybe, oh, what if they can swap it with someone else's? Like, okay, now you're the Final Girl, and I can perform an incredible feat of strength for free.
That could be interesting because technically you're sacrificing yourself, so you are no longer.
Yeah, so by definition, you're no longer the final girl.
That's it.
Yeah,
right? Someone else is going to be. There was a thing though about healing. We used to call them attributes, right? But let's say they're used as resources. The healing would. I don't remember who gave me that idea. It's either one of you two or Elaine or Hannah, but it goes on with it goes hand in hand with the tropes of horror movies or horror media, where like if you go out on your own, you gain like you heal something. If you share a secret, you have like a scene that becomes where a character opens up or whatever, as it happens so often in horror movie, and normally the character that opens up dies after. But you have like that way of healing, and just the pentagram itself could also heal stuff. But to have them as resources means that you also like imagine them as hit points. It's just you have 5 bars of hit points that you can tick off however you want. Maybe some are bigger than others. Maybe some archetypes but like, see, I'm talking about it and then I'm going, if archetypes determine your resources, then archetypes are like classes more than just flavor. And I don't want to go there. So I'm going to stop here.
Archetype might not be the right word for it.
I mean, I kind of like archetype, if only just because like it kind of encourages the player to like kind of like expand on the character and allow them to grow, just because like archetypes are what gets you killed in a horror movie. Is like you died as the jock because you stayed as the jock. Like it kind of encourages you to like change and grow and adapt.
The thing about the dread mechanic, by the way, this is an ability that every character in One Frightful Night ends up having, but only after gaining several levels. Which we didn't get to, and I don't think I'm going to keep it.
Yeah, and like it definitely it would have come into a play a bit more, I feel, if we had been able to level up more. But like then again, in some cases we were just way too specific about our pentagram. So easily fixable.
Yeah. But I'm also thinking of like removing a notion of leveling up, in the sense that I'm a big fan of like point buy games, right? Where it's not just a package when you level up, but it's like, I want to put like 1 point in this, 2 points in that, and whatever else.
Okay.
So that way you can just tweak your character the way you want it as you survive, keeping in mind that this game has two main play modes, which is anthology and let's call it franchise. One shots aside, right? So it makes sense in a franchise type of play that the same characters come back all the time, and they are, they improve over time. In an anthology, the idea that I had was, well, if say you have and it went hand in hand with the archetype. If you play a certain archetype and you do not survive, your next character gains the do not survive whatever ability that your old character had. If you survive, it will get another one, like bonus A, bonus B, right? So the other character that you create for a completely different game still, meta-wise, has something that you carry over from one character to the next. Like a little bit of your old character comes back. And it sort of builds up as you're playing an anthology. There still is this sort of leveling up mechanic where your last character, let's say we play 5 different games, like 5 different 4-shots with 5 different characters. Your 5th character is going to have way more abilities at their disposal than the early one. And perhaps that's a bad idea. I don't know yet. But it was something that I was thinking of. Again, lots of thoughts since the last playtest, but I haven't written down anything save for like bullet points. It's mostly like shower thoughts and then me going like, maybe I'll get back to it later.
As far as things we want to see, or I would like to see, and I think did I mention this before break or during break? I'm not sure. I like the flexibility of settings. So like guidelines or prompts or for like summer camp, Starship Port, Haunted Mansion, a office building downtown, like different scenarios and starts, and maybe that just comes naturally with the creatures, the monsters, the events that happen. I also do like the flex, because horror is such a broad scope. Like instead of maybe a monster, it's like an event or something. Kind of like I think we were discussing zombies and there being just like the ever-present horror that keeps coming for you, regardless of being able to stop, or a serial killer, which is very human, but like presents a different kind of horror. So, yeah, just like it might be fun to see like how all these ideas might fit into the system if they're able to.
I think it was during break that we talked about that. No, it was before break for the serial killer, I think. But I really want to have like the OFN version of the Romero zombies, OFN version of like Jason Voorhees, to see like how does it play in this game? What does it bring that is new that you wouldn't see in like a different game? Like even the game that we played with the entities from another world, that's technically Eldritch Horror. That's very much Call of Cthulhu. But it plays differently than a typical Call of Cthulhu game.
Yeah, honestly, it felt more coded to like Stranger Things than anything for me. Although Stranger Things is also very heavily 1980s themed, so legally distinct to Stranger Things.
but that's the thing, is our game, or OFN, I should say, is different from like Kids on Bike. It's not the same type of horror that you're gonna have. I would argue Kids on Bike is not necessarily horror, right? OFN is definitely different than, say, a game of like World of Darkness, where, you know, when you play Hunter, you kind of know that the creature is a werewolf, like, ahead of time. And the goal is just to prep to hunt them down. There is horror, but it's not the same type. Ain't nothing wrong with games taking place during the best decade of all time. I don't know, Mal. It gave us Reagan, so
That's a very strong argument.
it's fun to look back on it because it was fun during that time for a certain type of people, and then, you know, we're still suffering the consequences of it. But yes, to go back to a time when we didn't have social media, it would be nice. But I just love synth music and pixel art. That's just me. But yeah, on that, do you have any final thoughts for tonight, guys?
I had a great time. Would love to play again sometime.
Yeah, I mentioned this a little bit during the break, but I do hope that there's something that can be done with like the damage attributes, yeah, to like kind of like make them a bit more uniform. But that's just me as a player, like trying to like, you know, memorize all these different damage effects.
Oh, I want to
while
remove
I'm
that.
also wounded, while I'm also fighting.
No, that's gonna go away, by the way.
Whatever.
Oh, sorry, you stuttered.
Okay.
I think it's your connection, but that's going away. The like
No,
logic
I just
gives
said
you...
okay multiple times in a row.
Slow-mo, Tyler. If this becomes a published book, please
It's supposed to.
Please use our test characters for the describing scenarios of like Sheriff Robert Harker pulls out his gun. To shoot a gun in this game, you need to roll such and such.
Yeah, my examples right now in the book are...
He got promoted.
Hey, there you go. Happily ever after, to a point.
No, but I think I also asked you already, all 5 of you, when I reached out for the playtest, that like, if you want your name in the book, definitely it's in there. The goal is to publish the book, at least as a PDF, maybe as a soft cover. I mean, right now, just the design document that I have, if I remove, and it's still missing a few chapters, but if I remove my notes from it, it's already a 32-page document without any art. Considering that each monster takes between 1 to 2 pages. If you have 10 monsters, it's already 20 pages. So it's going to, I think near the end, I might be aiming for like 60 pages total, just so it's not too big, and that most of it is just like inspiration to dig from, right? Like the bestiary at the end, right? It's just, you're not going to use all of it in the game, but whatever. And the part with the how to play and the rules, I want it to be light enough that I want people to be able to pick it up, like not be intimidated by the book. Page count goes into that as well, but there's also an entire chapter. The first chapter of the book is just safety tools and like playing horror games, and that's gonna stay that way. And then we'll see. But yes, the intent is to publish the book as one of the many projects that I have going on.
Very cool.
We'll see. I don't know if it's going to be Kickstarted. If I ever do something like that, it's purely for art, just to have an art budget. Because otherwise, I'll just... Like, I have a few art pieces that I can use that I got the rights for, so long as it remains a PDF. And then, you know, we just so happen to know 2 of our players who weren't here tonight are both professional artists, so...
They were busy.
And Hannah does fantastic horror art, especially body horror. So...
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea for the game came from a conversation I had with her at Gen Con in 2022, and she showed me like her sketchbook. And then I saw a monster in there, and I was like, That's interesting. And then it started as a how would you run it in a game, right? And this OFN used to be called the 10, 12, 16 system, which is something that I had devised for my home group. We used to play horror games at Halloween every year. Like we'd rent a cabin in the woods and go play Cthulhu.
That sounds like fun.
And oh, thank you, Mal. And so every year we tried different things. Like we played Dread one year. We played a lot of different editions of Cthulhu. It's always one shots. And then there was one year that I didn't have any prep done. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know which system we're going to take. I don't have character sheets. I think I was out of ink on my printer. So I just devised a game that your entire character sheet fit on an index card. And it was the proto One Frightful Night. Basically, you chose, like, instead of a pentagram, you chose like one thing that you needed a 10 to succeed, two things that you needed a 12, two things that you needed a 16.
Gotcha.
And oh no, sorry, it's one that's an 8, two that's a 10, two that's a 16, and 12 is like everything else. Items gave you a +1 or a +2, so but like players would just like bullshit me and try to convince me that something could be useful or yada yada. And yeah, that was like the essence of it. So when she showed me that, she was like, how would you incorporate it in the game? I immediately thought back about that horror game that was so permissive, so free. And then I started working on the manuscript that became One Frightful Night. And I think I wrote most of it in like one feverish night, like from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. and then wrote like half the book. So also it shows with how some of the mechanics are going to jump and never be seen again. But they needed to be tested. That was the big thing.
That's how design works.
Yeah, that's it. It's always iterative. Thank you, Mal, for saying that you would be down for checking out some more OFM. And Crit as well. Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you to both of you and to the other players that aren't here today for agreeing to playtest this little game of mine. Thank you for being here tonight. I will pass the mics on to you if you want to shout out where we can find you, who you are, and everything. In the meantime, chat if you have like any last minute questions about the game or the playtest or what we've talked about tonight. Now's the time before I do my spiel. Mike's yours. I'm not saying who picks it. Just fight amongst yourselves.
I surrender.
I got a minor brain fart there, but I think I heard part of it, so...
Okay, Yutsai, your turn.
Hey,
who are you? Where can we find you?
You can find me at Yutsai at Blue Sky. You could technically find me on the other app, but I'm trying to jump that sinking ship. But yeah, you could also find me on Laugh Level Indies channel on Wednesdays, where I play a bit of a brusque antique dealer who's trapped underwater currently with the rest of the people as we're fighting something. Apparently there's something about being turned into a vessel. I don't fully understand it, but it sounds cool. So I don't know if that's something I'm doing yet. I guess I'll figure it out. But yeah, Laugh Level Indies channel on Wednesdays is when that game streams. So I think we only got a few more sessions left. So we will find out consequences to actions and decisions sooner than later.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming. And Tyler.
And yeah, I'm Tyler Boyce. And as I said at the top of the stream, you can find me on Twitter at Boyce Games, although I'm not on Twitter as much these days. But you can also find me on Blue Sky at Tyler Boyce. I don't really have anything immediately in the works, just because I'm doing a lot of prep for GDC and job applications. But that being said, when it is ready to be viewed and played, it's usually on my portfolio website, which is tylerlboyce.com. And yeah, that's where pretty much all the stuff I'm currently working on can be found. And I would like to say, kind of echoing what Pritwich said in chat a little while ago, I really do like how OFN has like a good solid mystery aspect to it. Like especially because like one of the key things with horror games I find is that it's the unanswered mystery that lasts the longest with. And yes, I realize I'm stealing this line from Alan Wake, but it is so true. Is like sometimes, there's a mystery that doesn't get solved, but even though you know there may not really be an answer, that's why it sticks with you. You keep trying to rationalize how could this work? Why did this happen? Why me? Why them? And it's just like I really like that and that was kind of partially with like our playtest, like
Mm-hmm.
that element of like beings from another world.
It drove Mr.
Um,
Morris crazy.
yeah, and that's what I like and that's why I really like when you said like, oh, well, as a anthology series, because you could definitely see that kind of like mystery element carrying on from one story to the other, even if it's like completely different monsters and characters. So yeah, I just love like being able to play in this little sandbox you created. So thanks for letting me be part of the playtest. This was awesome.
Very welcome. Tiny detail, because I realized when I talked about the anthology earlier, I forgot to mention. Even in anthology play, I want there to be a way or an option to keep the same character nonetheless. So it's not like you have to start over. But the thing is if you do start over, well, your new character gets something that if you had kept your character, you wouldn't have. Though your character that you keep, keeps whatever upgrades you bought during that first game. Malk asked a question. I think we're going to leave on that. I need to go blow my nose, so I'm going to ask you two to answer it first. What was the biggest inspiration for... what's been the biggest inspiration for RP gaming? So I guess what was the thing that got you into role-playing? I'm going to be right back.
Should I start or would you prefer to go first?
After you, Tyler. I've been talking a lot tonight.
No, that's great. You've got a lot of good ideas. For me personally, because I remember when I first got into like tabletop games, like I kept just trying to copy what like other like actual play actors were doing, like like whether it was Critical Role or Dimension 20 or like I wasn't really like coming up with my own style. But like when I got into actual play myself, um, I really just tried to dig deep into like how would an ordinary person do that? Like how would I handle this? And it sounds really weird because it's like oftentimes when I'm playing a character in an actual play or just general role play, I'm playing a character who's very different than myself. Not I'm kind of similar to Robert in some ways, but like I don't have that golden retriever energy all the time. Uh, I just try to approach it like how like an ordinary person would. Like, okay, there's this thing with giant arms and giant legs. How would I react to that? And then from there, I kind of branch out into different ideas of like, well, how would I like ideally for me to react to that, or like worst case scenario, how would I react to that? So like looking at like, all the possible like optimistic, pessimistic choices, and then ultimately I just end up going with like like what makes the most sense for this character. Like yeah, and I realize this is very nebulous, but I have played like a couple of characters like wildly different from each other. Like some that are like really good, like Robert Harker, and really evil, horrible people. It just kind of depends on the scenario. Uh, and so, yeah, more often than not, it's just like, okay, start with what would a normal, average 21st century person do about it? And then kind of spiral out into what would the best of humanity do about it? What would the worst of humanity do about it? And kind of just make the choice that makes the most sense for you as a person in that scenario. And that's probably the best advice I can give.
Cool. And Yutai.
Inspiration for RP. I guess when it comes down to it, character creation wise, I like playing foils. Everyone has such interesting characters. So I enjoy creating characters after knowing what's already coming into play, because then I can design something that is both fulfilling as like just a core character, but is also something that I know will cause friction or will supplement or complement someone else's character. It brings in interpersonal dynamics. You're not all just 5 separate heroes on your own separate hero's journey. You're like a group, you're friends, you're a team or something. So I kind of went into designing Chad in that way, where first I knew, oh yeah, Asshole's a popular horror type. Maybe he dies in the first session. That'd be fun. But it would give a reason to do things that make sense. Like kind of like Tyler was saying, like what would a normal person do? He get the fuck out of town. What would a guy who's concerned about himself first and foremost do? He tried to figure things out on his own, and if people make him mad, he doesn't need them. And that's always an interesting story note to it too, where a character realizes they fucked up or they made a mistake, and please take me back. I don't want to die out here.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
just by having, instead of like 2 very good characters that are just kind of like traveling along the same line, having one just tinted just a little bit where you know they're eventually going to run into something, whether it becomes and it doesn't have to be conflict. Like you can play a character who maybe they idolize something of another character, like they're the hero, or perhaps you don't want to base it too much on the other characters and you just want to play someone. It could be just like even like a vampire game where you have everyone being very political savvy, suave, dark, and sexy, and you're, look, I'm going to night classes at college. I just want enough money to pay off my loans. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a great release. Everyone always looks forward to that kind of the thing that's a little bit different. And then you provide a new angle to the story that without your character would not exist. So yeah, it's always good to design characters and character creation with everyone else in the room, because you can really come up with some interesting ideas that just plant the seeds that will definitely come up later.
Yeah. And quick corollary, because you brought up a really good point. A quick corollary to what I said. Please don't take my advice as license to be that person who's like, well, that's what my character would do, and just like, you know, metaphorical table flip. Like you should always be aware that you are not hogging the spotlight, you are sharing it. Like this isn't to say that your character always has to be like, completely helping out everyone no matter the circumstance. I mean, it's good if you have that. But one of the things I loved about Yusai's character is like even when he was a jerk, it was mostly to make the other characters look good by comparison. Like he wasn't necessarily like directly harming the group by doing whatever Chad did. And I do like that about it. That's why I'm so grateful for being able to RP with this cast, is like we recognize that even when we're being unreasonable, it's because it's like, okay, now it's your turn in the spotlight. You do something heroic. You do something good. And it's like it's bringing the best out of other people and other players and other characters, regardless of whether you're doing something that's like good or bad. So like Yusai has that down to a T. That I love Chad so much for that.
But
he's a jerk, but he's our group's jerk.
Yeah, he's our jerk. No, but to add to that, the fact that you make characters, like I'm doing communal character creation from now on. It's been going for a couple of years, but like I switched a while ago to no one's making their characters in secret. Because knowing what everyone plays and also everyone can inspire everybody else is very cool. But also, if you decide to play the jerk, you're at the table with everyone when you're making that character that, is going to probably be antagonistic to some point. The other players can ask you, like, okay, well, in a situation like this, would your character do X or whatever? So that when you say, this is something my character would do, like, actually everyone is already aware that, yeah, of course. Like, we know that if your backstabbing rogue gets a chance to steal money from one of us, they will. But also, I gave you consent to do it when we were making characters, because I was like, yeah, no, okay, that's cool. And then, maybe you wanted a redemption arc for the rogue or what have you. Like, there are ways to play jerks, and it works with everyone. Look at Chad.
Yes, and kind of like backing up what you two said, there's a big difference between like in game and above table. Like I made it a big point to make sure that my jerkishness wasn't actually annoying anyone because it
Mhm.
can. Like this is a game, that's a character, and I'm me, but like sometimes when people do stuff in character, it can bleed over a little bit. So checking in's good.
I remember
Double
you
checking
checking in
stuff.
on Zoom too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, then I will admit this is like my second jerkish character that's a little antagonistic. Uh, so I wanted to make sure I was being safe and no one was actually leaving the game upset. Uh, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun if you trust the people you play with and you are communicative, it does open up a lot of like interesting character archetypes because like in avenues because like I left town fully expecting to be dragged back somehow, and
Mhm.
the fact that Chad did it and he kind of deserved for it to happen because he was that guy kind of informed everyone else, well, we can't leave town.
No, that's it.
So it could be very helpful too in a game sense.
Mhm. As for me, before we leave, we are going to raid Valdrian, who's currently playing a horror game, Old Gods of Appalachia. Appalachia?
Very fitting.
I think it's Appalachia. Anyway,
I think you're right.
as far as our inspiration for RP gaming for me, if it's how I got into RP gaming, the one word answer is spite, but I'll leave that story for later. My inspiration for RPing in games, it's kind of weird, but it really just comes out organically when I'm making the character. Like I'll build a character and then I'll be like, oh, this is that type of person. Like I'm going to go for this. But at the same time, I'm not a player often, y'all. So I often just design a bunch of NPCs so I know what their personalities are like ahead of time. Like, I mean, yeah, I did create a whole like stable of NPCs for Vampire that, you know, I'll never play them, but I know exactly what goes on in their mind. Because I fucking put it on paper as I was creating them. Like Caleb's a Nosferatu, okay, cool, but Caleb comes from like Paris and he lived through XYZ, so I think he should react this way because blah 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 blah. And it's kind of the same when I play D&D. Like I'll just get like unless I start from like a funny concept because it's a one shot, I'll often just start with, okay, well, what's everyone's playing? What's the feel of the campaign? Like, what are we going for? And then I'll just build from there. And I think as a writer, Brian Sanderson called it the gardening, where it's just like you let your stuff grow and realize as it grows, like, oh, this is what it is. Like instead of doing all the landscaping and fixing everything, you're just like growing things, and they end up being something that you might not have known at the start. But I would bore you with this for hours, and I would spoil some other surprises for maybe this year. So I'm gonna stop there. Let's go raid Valdrianth. As for me, Simon at WanderingDM, at Wandering_DM on Twitter. WanderingDM no underscore because I was quick enough on Blue Sky, even though I'm not there often. And tomorrow, Trooper SJP at, I believe, 7:30 or 8 p.m. Eastern, the second part of our Sandman campaign, where we are no longer in 1940s Cairo. We are now in 1200 London. It's kind of weird because I know how to shoot a rifle. And on Monday, we continue Vampire the Masquerade, Montreal by Night. And Saturday, of course, this Saturday, unless I know Hawkeye's not there, so I don't know the situation for everybody else, but normally we are playing Scion Saturday afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. So thanks for coming, everyone. And let's go share the love and go say hi to other friends who are playing horror games. Bye-bye. Where's my button?